بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these verses records the conversation he has with Iblis, with Shaytan, at the time that he refuses to prostrate to Adam. And when Allah expels him from his kingdom and now eternally marks him as one who is wretched and one who is destined for hell, Shaytan now in rebellion speaks to Allah in these verses. قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Now, his main anger and hatred was for Adam, because he saw Adam as the cause of his downfall. He had a very high rank and a very high status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because of his deep-set jealousy towards Adam, and therefore the progeny of Adam, he blamed Adam in a sense that because of this new creation who was given this position and maqam of being the Khalifa of Allah when it should have been mine, when I am better than him, therefore his hatred was now for Adam and his children of Adam. So he says to Allah, because you have made me wretched, I will now sit waiting for them on your right path. And I will come to them from in front of them and from behind them. And I will come to them from the right side and from the left side. وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. And you will see, O Allah, that you will find very few from the progeny of Adam who will be grateful to you. There will be very few who will do shukr to you. Most of them you will find them ungrateful. Now, when we look at this ayah and we start breaking it down from a tafsir perspective, a lot of different points begin to reveal themselves. The first thing that becomes apparent is that Shaytan is blaming Allah and Adam for his downfall rather than taking responsibility for his own jealousy and his refusal and arrogance to prostrate before Adam. Why? Because he says, قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي, because you have made me wretched. So it is you who have caused this to me. The second thing he clarifies for us is that Allah has only one straight path, Sirat al-Mustaqim, and that humans by nature, their fitrah is to be on the right path, which is why we have this famous hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, كُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ يُولَدُ عَلَى فِطْرَةِ الْإِسْلَامِ. Every human child who is born on the divine instinct of following Islam, of believing in one God. ثُمَّ أَبَوَيْهِ يُنَصِّرَانَهُ or يُوَحِّدَانَهُ and so on. It is his parents then who make him a Christian or a Hindu or a Jew or any other faith that deviates from that. And that is why Islam presents itself as a deen of natural divine instinct, of fitrah. So Shaitan acknowledges it in this verse because he says to Allah, he doesn't say that some of them will already be misguided and those who are guided, I will misguide them. He says, no, I will sit waiting for them on the right path. لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. I will sit waiting for them on your right path. Why sit waiting for them? Because that is where I will find them. Because the natural instinct is to follow Sirat al-Mustaqim. And then he now declares his strategy. ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ. I will attack them from the front. وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ. And from behind. وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ. And some of them I will attack from the right side and some from the left side. وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. Now, why is he revealing his tactic? Is he not afraid that Allah will block those avenues and stop him from being able to come to the children of Adam from those avenues? No, he is revealing it because he is in a sense asking permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is making sure that Allah is not going to block those avenues. He is trying to gauge and assess that are these roads and avenues open for me. And indeed Allah tells him that you do what you want. Now then he comes and says, وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. And you will find most of them ungrateful. This is very, very important because it tells us what his end goal is. That the ultimate goal of Shaytan is not that you commit a sin, because he knows when you sin you can always do istighfar and you can undo that. What he really wants is for you to forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wants you to sin so much that you get to a point where you feel that now there is no point in doing istighfar and tawbah, because I have gone so far out that even Allah will not forgive me now. Wal-iyadhu billah. To lose hope, to become so skeptical that you no longer think of Allah or thank Him. That is the point he wants to get to. And that is why he says, I will do all these and you will find most of them ungrateful. And therefore being grateful versus being ungrateful becomes the measure and the yardstick by which you determine whether Shaytan has taken grasp of our souls or not. The more we are able to express this shukr to Allah and remain aware that He is our benefactor, that itself is evidence that Shaytan has not yet taken a grasp or a hold on us in this. Now, there is a very nice and beautiful hadith, and all the ahadith are beautiful, but this is very much related to this verse, as a tafsir of this verse from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And this is given in the Tafsir Majma'ul Bayan. It is an, highly regarded Shia tafsir. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam explains this ayah of Qur'an. What did Shaytan mean when he said, I will attack from the front and the back and the right and the left? He says, when he said, I will attack them from the front, لَأَتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ, what he meant was, أُهَوِّنُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْآخِرَةِ, I will make the hereafter to seem trivial to them. They will claim there is a day of judgment, but it won't be in front of them in their day-to-day activities. They will forget about it. I will make it insignificant to them, the hereafter. The world will be significant, the hereafter will be insignificant. And I will attack them from behind. He said what that means is, أُفْسِدُ عَلَيْهِمْ أَمْرَ الدُّنْيَا دِينَهُمْ بِتَزْيِينِ الضَّلَالَ وَتَحْسِينِ الشُّبْهَةِ. I will, that is the from the right side. From behind, he says, أَمُرُهُمْ بِجَمْعِ الْأَمْوَالِ وَمَنْعِهَا عَنِ الْحُقُوقِ لِتَبْقَى لِوَرَثَتِهِمْ. Attack them from behind. Attack them from the front is I will trivialize and make the hereafter insignificant. Attack them from behind is I will command them to accumulate wealth. And I will strike in them the fear of poverty so that they will be concerned about saving it for their children and their posterity. Now, this is a very delicate subject, obviously, because Islam does tell us to save some for a rainy day, and so that when we pass away, our spouse and our children are not homeless and are not without wealth. But he is talking here about amassing wealth to an unreasonable degree, where there is no limit, where someone has accumulated $1 million, he wants 2, he has 10 million, he wants 20, and the constant argument is, I need to save this for my children, so that my children will not have to work. Even though we in our own lives know that if we didn't have any work to do, we wouldn't be very productive in life. And we would actually not have a very nice life if we were just sitting at home doing nothing with millions of dollars in the bank. That thing that we complain about, getting up in the morning and having going to work, is actually what gives us a purpose and gives us some meaning to our lives and gives us some sense of a schedule and some meaning to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So he says, I will command them that whatever huquq you have to give in your religion, zakat, khums, whatever it is, don't give it. Save it for your children, for the future, because that is where they will need it. And I will attack them from the right side. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam says, that is أُفْسِدُ عَلَيْهِمْ أَمْرَ دِنْيَاهُمْ. I will corrupt their understanding of religion, and I will make misguidance to appear beautiful and appealing to them, and I will also make doubts to appear nice to them. وَتَحْسِينُ الشُّبْهَةِ. And this is very, very important because, and I will come back to this, but then he says, and attack them from the left is, I will make their lusts and their desires to seem beautiful to them, and it will overwhelm and overcome their judgment and mindset, so that even though with their minds they will know this is wrong, but with their emotions and their hearts it will overwhelm them. They will not be able to control their desires in committing sins. Now, we know from general understanding of Islam that the right is associated with goodness. The Quran speaks of Ashabul Yameen as people of paradise, and Ashabul Shimal as people of hellfire, people of the left side. Or the Quran speaks, for example, of how the righteous will be given their books of deeds, their a'mal, in their right hands. The wretched and those destined for hell will be given their books in their left hand, or from behind, min wara'i dhuhurihim, from behind their backs. So wherever the Quran or Hadith uses right and left, it uses it a lot of time with the idea of good versus evil. So here what the Imam is explaining is that there are two kinds of Muslims. There are those who are religious and those who are irreligious. The reason why he attacks from the right side by corrupting religion is because that is the side from which he attacks the religious. And the reason why he attacks from the left side with enamoring and decorating desires and sin is because that is the side from which he attacks the sinful and the irreligious. And the point of all this is that he does not leave anyone. Shaytan's strategy and his progeny, he has his vast progeny as well, just as Adam alayhi salam has, and just as the angels are a vast progeny, is that he will spare no one, but he will use whatever means is best to attack someone based on his makeup and his setup. He knows, for example, that someone who is religious will not easily be convinced to go and consume alcohol, for example, wal-iyadhu billah, or eat pork, for example, or commit zina, wal-iyadhu billah, or something like, sinful like that. He knows that. So he's not even going to try that, because he knows this person has faith as a barrier that will protect him from that. What he does with him is he uses religion. He uses doubts. He creates different sects and different groups and different ideas and different ideologies, so that the religious get confused. And deep down there is a spiritual disease. That disease is perhaps a desire for fame, or a desire for authority, or a desire for prestigious, or a desire for people to say this person has a lot of religious knowledge. So there is another underlying reason that that individual is not even aware of. But he will use religion to create confusion and doubt. Which is why you will see that in any society you live in, where there is a large number of mu'mineen, you will find there is a lot of groups and divisions, a lot of masajid and centers that are not only divided on the basis of geographical location or convenience, but sometimes divided because of a difference of opinion in ideology and understanding. There are some, for example, who in the name of the Ahlul Bayt and showing their love have extreme ideas of ghulu. There are some, for example, who are very liberal and pluralistic in their mindset, and in the name of being intellectual have a very different understanding of religion. There are some who see themselves as being very moderate, but they, for example, lack the courage to speak up the truth when they need to. There are some who see themselves as being very scientific, so they're skeptical and doubtful about everything, and they downplay the importance of Sharia and only talk about philosophy and spirituality and the need to focus on the meaning behind the law, but not the law itself. So you find all these ideas appealing to people's minds. Some of these are a natural result of ignorance. Some of it are the result of a process of attaining maturity, but some of these are from Shaytan when he attacks from the right side. And as I explain how he attacks, it will become more clear. But the Quran has a history of communities where Shaytan misguides people, and the people who commit the greatest sin and kill even the prophets of Allah were those who were religious in their own false religions, such as the idol worshippers. So for example, in Surah Al-Anbiya, which is chapter 21, verse 68, we are told that when the idol worshippers wanted to burn Ibrahim alayhi salam and throw him in the fire, And they wanted to get people to burn him. They didn't get the irreligious. They got the religious people, the ones who were very religious in idol worship. And they used a certain idea to convince them why we should burn Ibrahim. قَالُوا حَرِّقُوهُ. They said, burn him to death. وَانْصُرُوا آلِهَتَكُمْ. And thereby rescue your gods. إِن كُنْتُمْ فَاعِلِينَ. Because if you don't do it, then who will rescue your gods? You see, it didn't occur to them that how is he my God if I have to rescue him? But the mindset was a religious one. And when you see the people who opposed Nuh alayhi salam as well, they said to each other, قَالُوا لَا تَذَرُنَّ آلِهَتَكُمْ. Don't listen to Nuh. Don't forsake your gods. وَلَا تَذَرُوا وَلَا تَذَرُنَّ وَدًّا وَلَا سُوَاعًا وَلَا يَغُوثَ وَيَعُوقَ وَنَصْرًا. These were the famous idols that they had. They had Wud, and they had Suwa, and they had Yaghuth, and they had Ya'uq, and they had Nasr. And there's a very interesting history behind these. That there were 5 individuals in those community that were very pious and very religious. And when they died, how Shaytan came to them and convinced them to build idols of them. And generation after generation, how he made them into gods. And now they argue against Nuh to say, don't listen to Nuh because he will take you away from your gods. And from these 5 great gods, do not forsake your religion, the religion of your forefathers. So we begin to see that Shaytan has a strategy for everyone. It's not just Shaytan is only after those who are irreligious. This is a common misconception we have a lot of times, that when Shaytan wants to misguide, he looks for people who are not religious, and then he goes after them with the weapons of sin. No, he goes after the pious as well. He goes after the religious as well. In fact, we have a hadith that says, there are more shayateen on a mu'min, not a fasiq, not a munafiq, not an ordinary Muslim, a mu'min. There are more shayateen on a mu'min than there are on a piece of meat that is left out under the hot sun on a hot summer day. The process that Shaytan uses is he looks for something in your heart that you want besides Allah, and then he uses it to his advantage. Now, Shaytan is very weak, but he's also very dangerous. He's very weak because Allah has not given him the ability to force any human being to commit a sin. And on the day of judgment, when humans will tell Shaytan that it was you who led us to the fire of hell, he will say to them, I only suggested ideas to you and you listened to me. إِنَّمَا دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. I just called you and you came running to me. I didn't force you. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. So don't blame me now, blame your own selves. Shaitan is a salesman. Shaitan is a broker. What he does is he looks at what you desire and then he packages it. He boxes it with a nice wrapper, he puts a nice ribbon on it, and then he presents it to you. But he is very weak. He cannot force you. What makes him dangerous is that we are told in hadith that he flows in the children of Adam, يَجْرِي فِي ابْنِ آدَمْ كَمَجْرِيَ الدَّمْ. He flows in us like blood flows. What does that mean? That means, first of all, he can see us, but we can't see him. And the Qur'an testifies to this. هُوَ وَقَبِيلَهُ يَرَاكُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُ. He and his progeny, they see you from a place where you cannot see them. Because they are subtle beings. So, he can see you, you can't see him. Secondly, because he can read your thoughts and your minds, he can plant a thought and a mind and an idea when you're not in a state of taqwa, when you're not God conscious for a moment and you slip. He can plant an idea into your heart and your mind, and you will not be able to tell it apart from your own thought and your own idea. So it becomes your own thought and your own idea, but what you don't realize is that it's not from you. And that is where he becomes dangerous. And therefore it becomes important to find a means of relief and rescue to escape this enemy who is able to plant waswasa and thoughts in the hearts of the children of Adam. And that means of rescue is that constant consciousness and awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the reason Allah tells you to submit to Him is not because He wants your prayers and your fasting. It's not because unless you do things for Him, then He can give you Jannat. It's not because He gets something or He becomes greater if you glorify Him. No, it is because that is the only way to save yourselves from the attack of Shaytan. It is that consciousness that will keep Shaytan doing tawaf of your heart, but he will not find a means to penetrate and come into our minds. And that is why you see that when Shaytan cannot come directly to you, then he will use those who are near you to come to you. So for example, in chapter 64 verse 14, he says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, inna min azwajikum wa awladikum aduwwun lakum fahdharhum. O you who have faith, from your spouses and your children there are enemies of you, so beware of them, for some of you. Here it doesn't mean enemy as in enemy like the wife of Lut and the wife of Nuh and spouses and children who are sinful and against religion. No. It means that sometimes you might have a higher level of faith and understanding, but your children or spouse don't have that. They might come and appeal to you and beg to you to do something haram, to earn a livelihood that is not lawful because they are hungry or because they really want this thing that they cannot afford. And you, out of your kindness and your love for your children, will fall for it. So what happens here now is that Shaitan does not come to you directly. He comes through an ambassador. He comes through an agent. He uses a wasila. He uses a means to appeal to you. And that is why you will see that human beings have different makeups. But in the name of religion, they do wrong in different ways. So for example, if he sees that you are a person who is very gentle and very kind-hearted, then he will use your family members to appeal to you to do something wrong, because that is, he cannot get to you directly. If he sees you are someone who is very compassionate about all humanity and you want to save all humanity, he will bring ideas of, let's say, liberalism and pluralistic ideas into your mind so that your nature will agree with it and you will believe those ideas are your own. If you're a person who is very narrow-minded, very firm, very strict, very stubborn, very arrogant, doesn't change, he brings religious bigotry into you. You become like ISIS and Taliban, and he brings this idea of, in the name of Allah, you have to purify the earth and kill everyone who disagrees with you, and you think you're doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Shaitan is using your nature of being that stern, angry, non-compromising in the name of religion. If you are the intellectual kind, he will use your predisposition to being doubtful and skeptics about everything to say, well, this mu'jiza can't be true, that mu'jiza can't be true, the Ahlul Bayt could not be like this. If we are the emotional kind, what we call, jazbati, where we get emotional about everything, then he will use that love of Ahlul Bayt to create ideas of ghulu, of, Amir al-Mu'mineen created the world, and you begin to follow the same path that the Christians followed with Jesus. The person who first came up with the idea that Jesus is the Son of God and Jesus is God also did it from a religious perspective. So Shaitan will use any part of our nature. Are we emotional? Are we intellectual? Are we stern? Are we liberal? And whatever we do, he will use that. The only people he cannot get to are the mukhlasin, those who are absolutely, sincerely, single-minded, devoted to Allah. Which is why in another place in the Quran, he says to Allah, لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ لَأُغْوِيَنَّ عِبَادَكَ مِنْ أَجْمَعِينَ إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصِينَ. I will misguide every single one of the children of Adam except those who are absolutely sincere and mukhlasin to you. And we have in Tafsir that these mukhlasin who are absolutely pure from any attack from Shaitan and sin are none other than Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. When Shaitan is saying, I will misguide all of them, illa ibadaka minhumul mukhlasin, he is not saying that I'm going to be nice and I'm going to leave those who are sincere. He is an open enemy. What he is saying is, he is admitting defeat. He is saying to Allah, these I accept, I will not be able to get to. Why? Because they are so single-mindedly devoted to you, no matter how hard I try to plant ideas, I will not be able to get to them, because their taslim and ikhlas is at such a level that anything I plant does not germinate, because they don't have any will of their own, they don't have any desires of their own, they don't have any wants of their own that opposes yours. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. You do not want anything, O Muhammad, except what Allah wants. مَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. He does not speak out of his own desire. So those who I will not be able to reach are those who are absolutely sincere. So now we want to draw to a conclusion and say that if we understand now the strategy of Iblis, that what he wants from us is something that we desire other than Allah. And there are so many things we desire that are halal. But what we need to be aware and conscious of is that when you desire anything other than Allah, it is for yourself, not for Allah. So it is a selfish desire, even if it is halal. And the moment it is selfish, that means for myself, now I have opened a door to Shaytan. He listens to our heart and says, what is it that you really want? Is it a career you want? Is it a place you want to go and live? What was it that misled, for example, Umar ibn Sa'd? He wanted the kingdom of Ray, isn't it? He wanted the governorship of Ray. So what is it you want? Do you want position? Do you want authority? Do you want wealth? Do you want a bigger car? Do you want a bigger home? Do you want children? What is it you want is what Shaitan is asking. And once he knows what you want, then all he has to do is plant an idea that is wrong, but you believe it is yours. So that you will now forget the hereafter and momentarily focus on that. And his hope is that if he repeats this onslaught again and again and attacks repeatedly, then we will come to a point of iyas, a point of despair, where we will not want to repent, to turn back to Allah, and we will give up and forget Allah and forget the idea of shukr. So when we talk about how do we fortify ourselves from Iblis, the first and foremost method, which is difficult for most people, is that absolute surrender to Allah. We're told in the Qur'an that everyone will have fear on the Day of Judgment because they won't know where they're going. Everyone. Except إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Except the one who comes to Allah with a heart that has surrendered completely. Now when you look at Tafsir, what is Qalbus Salim? What does it mean that everyone will have fear on the Day of Judgment except the one who comes with a Qalbus Salim? The Tafsir of that is that except somebody who comes with nothing else in his heart except Allah. And of course, by extension then, we speak of the love of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, that is also wanting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they are his agents and his ambassadors. So unless somebody comes with this absolute purity, they will have some level of fear. That is difficult for us to attain right away. The other way to do it is the dhikr of Allah, of course. That constant remembrance of Allah is a way to protect us from Shaytan. And Allah says, وَمَنْ يَعْشُ عَنْ ذِكْرِ الرَّحْمَنِ نُقَيِّدْ لَهُ الشَّيْطَانِ فَهُوَ لَهُ قَرِينٌ. Whoever turns away from the remembrance of Allah, constant remembrance of Allah, we appoint for him a shaitan so that he becomes his neighbor, his partner. And that is why there is so much emphasis on the dhikr of Allah. And then the other point, which is what I wanted to mention for tonight and conclude, is shukr. Now, we have a hard time doing constant dhikr of Allah. We have a hard time being so sincere and mukhlis. We have a hard time surrendering to Allah and having this taslim. But this is something that inshallah we can try, is to develop this habit of doing shukr to Allah, which we have lost. Alhamdulillah itself appears small, but it's a big thing, because it now is an acknowledgement that this is not something that is my right. This is something that my Lord has given me, and I am acknowledging. And I'm doing so to again keep that connection with Him. And look at this thing that, Shaytan, when he said, I will misguide all of them, what did he say? He said, وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. He said, my goal is you will find none of them to be doing shukr to you. None of them will be grateful to you. Allah combines His remembrance with shukr in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 152. He says, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ. Remember me, I will remember you. In other words, I am constantly thinking of you. The moment you think about me, you will find me present. That if you remember me, you will find me with you. وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. And be grateful to me, and do not be ungrateful. He is giving us that rope. We are in the ocean sinking. He is throwing us that lifeline to say, be grateful to me constantly, and do not be ungrateful. And this will be your lifeline from Shaytan. This is one of the first places we need to look at in our lives and say on a day-to-day basis, how much gratitude do I express to Allah? The first thing we do is complain. When I fall sick, I complain. But the first thing I should do is be grateful for all the time that I had health. When someone I love passes away, I am upset, I feel sad, I lament. But have I done shukr for all the time that I had with him or her in life? So everything is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We come to believe this is my child, this is my mother, this is my father, this is my home, and therefore when we lose it, we lament. But if we always see things as a blessing and a temporary custody we have over a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then when He gives us, we do shukr. When He takes it away, we do shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the adab, and this is the falsafa of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. We see that they were constantly doing shukr at every stage in their lives, during days of happiness and during days of sadness.
اللهم صل على محمد